Welcome to the weekly share of the Zera Shimshon, or almost weekly. Yeah, last week I was not feeling very well again, and I'm going from 3 naps to 2 naps to 1 nap. And yesterday I didn't even have 1 nap. I was working all day. Thank God. So this is Chaf Aleph Menachem Av Tafshin Pei Aleph L'Shbliyas Olam 81 to the creation of the world. And we're going to do a piece here in Parshat Eikev, the Zera Shimshon. It says Midrash Avkir. It's a very interesting Midrash, only mentioned in the Ein Yaakov and Gemara in Yuma Daf Ayin Daled, which everybody just made a siyum on. So he says, I afflicted you and I made you fast and I fed you the man. If we got fed the man, how did he make us fast and how did he afflict us? Okay, what's got to do with that? That's the remez to lighting candles on Shabbos. What? Okay, let's get this straight. What's one got to do with the other? So this relationship is understood from the Midrash Rabbah and Koheles. When there's more good, then you can increase the people eating, feeding. It says Sha'alain Menachem Ma'u Din Dechsiv. It says V'yancha v'yarevecha v'yachilu chasaman. What does it mean that he afflicted you and he caused you to starve and he fed you the man? So one got steers to the other, right? One doesn't make sense. Did he give food that made you hungry? How could he give him food that made him hungry? The man, it was if tasted whatever you wanted it to taste, and it filled you up. So he brought him in front of him 2 cucumbers. One was broken and one was full. Omer Hadad Shlemta Hi Bekama. So he said, this whole one, how much is it? Omer Betrain Minayin. So he says 2. Bechada Tevira Bekama. How much is the one that's broken worth? Omer Bechad Mana. We'll say 1 mana. So you got 2 for the whole one and 1 for the broken one. It's understood. Omer Ki ein hashur gadola ki moy hashleima. 1 second, is the size of the broken one as large as the big one, as the whole one? It's not similar. Very important case. This is just like a person has a pleasure when he tastes whatever he's eating, he has a pleasure from seeing it also. Everybody enjoys the looks of that huge burger from Buddy's Burgers, okay? Anyway, if you didn't eat Buddy's Burgers in Eretz Yisrael, you don't know what I'm talking about. But a prime 10, there we go, okay. Ve'im Kain Bizman Shu, or Ken's Diner. There, anybody from Chicago knows Ken's Diner's burgers. Woo! Ve'im Kain Bizman Shu lo hayu royim elo b'aman. Therefore, when you saw the man, well, it didn't look like anything. It reminded them like somebody was trying to make you famine, trying to make you fast and instead of eat nicely. There was no presentation in this, right? Well, they all said what you're paying for is the presentation, right? Shmini, there's Yuma, Pergayan Dalan in Yuma. Ain't Daima Mishi Yeshle Pas Salada Misha Ainai Pas. So it's not similar at all to somebody that has some bread in his basket, to me that doesn't. It's an expression. It's better if you have something to eat than nothing to eat. Ain't Daima Misha Roya Va'oicham Misha Aina Roya Va'oicham. Not similar whatsoever to somebody who sees his food and eats, and to somebody who can't see. So shahasumin oichlim ve'enam sevim. So people that are blind, la aleinu, la alechem, so they can eat, but they don't get ever satisfied. According to this, it's prohibited to fast on Shabbos. You have to have a meal on the night of Shabbos and to call Shabbos an oinig, a pleasure. You have to have geshmaka meat, geshmaka drinks, right? That's what we call the Shabbos oinig. Kol ha'me'anig as a Shabbos, yesh l'chelik l'olam haba. Right? Mishum hachi tzrichim anu lahadlik neres b'Shabbos kadei shelo yehi sham inui v'rava. And therefore it says, the Gemara in Shabbos says, it's a pasuk in Eikev. I don't remember the exact pasuk. It says, natshi mituva, nitashi mituva. They took away the goodness from me. That means he took, the Gemara says, he took away the light of Shabbos. You have to have light on Shabbos so you can see the food. That's the very important thing. It's part of Einik Shabbos. B'zeo shomar midikara midika'amar kra v'yancho v'yarivecho v'yachilu v'saman mikan remiz l'adlakas neiros b'Shabbos. So he also says that this pasuk indicates that you've inflicted us and you've made us fast. That's being, and then he fed us the man mikan. From here you have to remiz the light candles on Shabbos. Kadeshi hesham kol ha'nois, in order that you have all the pleasures of Shabbos, the riyah and the achila and the seviyah. Hanas hatam v'hanas hareach. The pleasure of the taste and the pleasure of the seeing. V'zeu, that's what he means. V'karasa l'shan v'is oineg, sha'adavar tolui b'yav da'adam l'kreis oineg. So you got to have the oineg, the sensitivity, the pleasure of Shabbos, and without seeing it, you're not going to have the same pleasure. La'achar shezimin ha'ma'achalim loy sagi imli loy yikro'eu oineg. So even though you've arranged all the food, it doesn't help unless you can call it a pleasure. That is, what's considered pleasure? L'hadlakas neiros. Lighting the candles, being able to see the food. And you want to be able to compliment your wife how beautiful the food looks. Yishlemer the Isa bin Perforshim Hatam Shanasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Haman Derech Inui V'Yaravin. Why did God give the Jewish people this man? He could have given them steak. What's the problem? He gave them slav later on. They could see that. So what's the problem here? They gave them the water, which they could see. Haino Lefisha Haman Hu Haya Mazin Ruchani V'Loi Gufani. The man was a spiritual experience in food, and not a physical experience. It's impossible to have a pleasure in this world with some spiritual food, but especially physical pleasure. Like this man, how could he serve the person as a food? Therefore he gave it to them in a way that they couldn't experience complete, total spiritual pleasure because it wasn't that kind of food. Rak hanas chasera. Hana chasera was missing the pleasure of this physical side. Just like all other pleasures in this world, which is not complete pleasure. That's the city. Nobody's ever satisfied with whatever they get. Nobody. Even if it's temporary, it's only temporary. It's not a shalema, it's not complete. What we eat on Shabbos, though, is spiritual. It's not only spiritual, but it's also physical. But it has that part of it that it's also has a spiritual entity to it, essence to it. Shahari Kasav Rishis Chachma and Shar Kedusha and Shar and Perik Tezvav. Shar Rishis Chachma writes, Shekol HaBasar v'Hashuman HaMisrabe ba'Adam b'Shvil Achila Shabbos v'Yom Tov Eino Nepach l'Remez l'Rima v'Saileah. This is a big chiddush. He says, and the Rish Chachma should know, he's a big mekubal. So, all the meat and the fat that you increase in eating on Shabbos and Yom Tov, it doesn't turn over to be worms and bugs in your grave. Not bad. Now, don't take this as a heter to stuff yourself on Shabbos. That's achila gasa. But on the other hand, but you can have a pleasure from the food, and that pleasure is a spiritual pleasure, and it won't turn to be worms in the grave. Al Zen Emar, it says in Tehillim, Af besori yishkoin levetach. Even my flesh will be certain forever. V'im kain minadein hu tzorich le'oichle b'li inu v'ravain. So therefore, minadin, you can eat it without having any affliction and Shabbos there's no fasting. So you should eat it with the lit candles in order to have this. We have to have lights in order to have that pleasure, that full pleasure. Satiation. This satisfaction is spiritual satisfaction. And that's what it says in the Yalkut and Shemaini, Yalkut Shemaini and Bahalaischa and Rames Tafshin Yud Tes, and the pasuk Bahalaischa Saneres Kavayda Shabbasim Neresel. That's what it says. Bahalaischa Saneres, talking about the elevating the candles or lighting the candles of Shabbos. And Bezuchusa Mani Mare Lachem Neres Shal Tzion. And with this honor, and I will show you the neres of Tzion, which is the Klal Yisrael, right? And I my own, Shechina speaking here, Ani b'chvoidi meir lachem, chsiv lo yeh lecha oid hashemesh. When the Mashiach comes, you won't need the sun anymore, because the light of the kedusha of the Shechina will be greater than the sun. Hashem le'or olam. V'kol kach lama b'zchus harav haneres she'atem madlikim b'Shabbos ad kan l'shayna. And that's the Pirush, Zil Pirush Midrash Shema'oroi Shema'isei Tam Atzmai Nasan Lehem Haman Shu Ruchani Be'inui V'Ravain. That's why he gave them the man in this fashion that they should be afflicted and hungered by it. So that they wouldn't become, completely megusham, means materialistic. Hamazin la'adam gufani, mishum hachi ve'aisei tam atzmai tzarich haneres dolkais besudas leil Shabbos. That's why again he repeats, you need to have the candles lit and light on their Shabbos so you can see the food. Kadesha l'rem l'rmais ruchnias. Afilu oifen haramos oifen harmazan agashmi, so that you'll have this ruchnius experience with physical food. She'ena misapech l'rima v'seileah, that doesn't turn into, like the Shreishish Chachma says, doesn't turn into worms and bugs in the grave. V'zeu k'vayid gadol l'Shabbos shebezeh anu roimzim she'oisa achila hi lanu kimay achila ruchnius. So this would be spirish. So Asi Shaper Masha Omer with Gemara Pesachim Daf Kuf Aleph said, "Ein kiddush ela b'makam suda." You can only have kiddush where there's a suda. The fisha has suda zu kedusha v'ruchnius eishba, because this meal has a holiness to it. Lachein v'tzorich la'asais kiddush kaidam achila. Therefore, we have to be mekadesh. We have to sanctify the meal so that it is imbibed with this spiritual entity, essence. Kedei l'rumayz sha'achila zu kula kedusha v'nicha shaper shekarosh kod kiddush That's why they called it Kiddush V'loy Zechira, which is based on the pasuk Zochar Siyam Shabbos Akadshai. That's a remez that Kiddush is midaraisa. So afagad the nafkala on mikra Zochar Siyam Shabbos Zechira Yayin b'kinasasai, even though it says to mention it on the Kiddush on Yayin, which is a deraisa. But we have to say that it's Kiddusha, it's holiness. And the segula. Now, I have had one comment that anybody who watched the Tu B'Av that was put on, it was a fantastic presentation, but they forgot one thing. They forgot that the biggest segula for shidduchim is learning Zera Shimshon. There's Eina Kamayo. I don't care if you have 100 Mekubalim learning at Tu B'Shvat. It wasn't on Tu B'Shvat anyway, so you can make up all kinds of segulas, but if you have a Badik and Menusa, something that's proven over time to be the main segula for this shidduchim, then they should have at least mentioned it. Okay. A footnote. Okay, that's all my taina. Okay. The segula of the Zera Shimshon, I'm sorry to be so critical, but I'm sure that there was somebody who wanted to mention it and they probably were not considered because of some other reason. I'm sure there was a good reason. Anyway, the segula of the Zera Shimshon, inasmuch as the same way that as from Yidden we should be always trying for better and better mitzvah observance, the same thing is true regarding our relationship with the Gedolei Yisrael, both those who are still alive and those who have passed since. Zera Shimshon is a prime example of a gadol with whom many Yidden have had genuine relationship even now, hundreds of years after his passing. The following letter was sent to Rabbi Yisrael Zilberberg. Dear Rabbi Yisrael, I was first introduced to the Sefer Zera Shimshon in the book Moments, the first volume in the Moments series written by Rav Nachman Seltzer, of course, who wrote this also, the translation. After I read about the Sefer, I found myself excited by what I had learned, and I decided to get hold of the Sefer and learn from it. I learned the Sefer regularly, and Baruch Hashem, within a short time, I saw incredible Yeshuas in my personal life. Living as I do in Europe, I wasn't sure how many people knew about the Sefer or how popular it was. But the longer I learned the Sefer, the clearer it became to me that I shouldn't just learn by myself, but should do my best to share this treasure with other people. I therefore began sending out a weekly email to a list of people whom I knew would enjoy a good piece of Torah. I decided to begin writing the weekly email on Hanukkah, and sat down to write the first one a few days later, which I sent out that Erev Shabbos. Now it so happens that I have a daughter, which one I logged, who had gotten divorced a while before, and I had very much wanted to see her find a shidduch so she could have another chance at fulfilling her dreams. While it was true that I was already learning the Sefer and I could have claimed that this was enough, I wanted to do something more, to tip the scales, as it were, for the schus of my daughter. Weeks and then months went by, and though at first nothing happened, my daughter did get engaged over a year after I first began writing my weekly emails. One Motzei Shabbos, we were sitting around the table enjoying Milava Malka when we started discussing the events that had led up to the shidduch. My son-in-law told us about some of the things that happened during his first marriage. I made the decision to get divorced and to move on with my life, as he said on Hanukkah. We separated a few days later and got divorced shortly thereafter. Rabbi Yisrael, I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn that the day my son-in-law made the decision to move on with his life was exactly the same day that I made the decision to begin writing weekly emails on Zera Shimshon. Surprise! The whole situation was especially interesting to me since I had been learning and teaching the Sefer for so long without anything happening. But when my son-in-law told me his side of the story, I suddenly understood that I had been mistaken and that the Yeshua had already begun as soon as I took the first step. Naturally, I knew that I needed to share the story with you and all the people who care about Zera Shimshon and affirm his legacy to more and more Yidden all over the world. Sincerely yours, and maybe you have Matzlacha and your Avodas Hashem. He gave a fake name, but it doesn't matter. It can happen to all of us in Yisrael Hashem. You should ever see Yeshua's B'Karev, and in the meantime, I can't do any more than I'm already doing. But I hope everybody has a little pleasure. And I probably could testify to that my own daughter got engaged without one even, we didn't even look at a shadchan. She never even expected to go out with anybody. And all of a sudden, she's getting married. Thank God. You have a wonderful Shabbos. Kol Tov.